Hey everyone, thanks for coming to the session on DLP Detection Best Practices. This is a part of Customer Success Summer Webinar Series 2023. We've had a few very interesting topics across the board in the last few weeks, and we have many more to come as well. So please stay tuned. Currently, this is scheduled for Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific, over a series of several weeks. So in today's session, we have myself and Azadeh over here to talk about DLP best practices. We'll also be taking questions towards the end of the session. We'll start with introducing the product a little bit and then jump right into the actual topic of what it takes to have best-in-class detections and how to best tune the engine for your requirements of the DLP program. And then we dive into some of the product advancements if there's more time, or we'll open it up for Q&A, and based on Q&A, we'll go ad hoc on the schedule as well. So introducing our DLP cloud service, right? This is what we have is a fully cloud delivered data loss prevention engine. What that means is it is able to scan across multiple channels, all within the Palo Alto Networks portfolio. So for data at rest, we have our Next-Gen CASB solution that supports over 27 different connectors, such as the likes of AWS S3, Google Workspace, G Suite, Office 365, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Jira, Confluence, and Slack, and quite a few other connectors over here that looks for data at rest. And then on the Prisma Cloud side, we have S3, Azure Storage, GCP Cloud Storage, and everything else that you're able to configure for data at rest DLP. We just recently introduced email DLP, which does MTA-based approach to emails. So if the sensitive information that's being sent on emails, you can prevent it from going out even before the fact. And then we have our Prisma Access and the traditional firewall offerings, in all of which we support data in motion controls via DLP as well. So it doesn't matter which is the shape or form that you have of your firewall. It could be Prisma Access, it could be NGFW or VM series. We support data in motion DLP in each of those vectors. So as you can see, the clean advantage that you get here is you have a single cloud service, which means one single policy vector that you can configure across the board. So if you have sensitivity around PII, you can just configure once and use it everywhere across any of these channels. So just a few things in terms of introduction, right? Here we are talking about the app coverage, which we already spoke about, and then we have best-in-class detection techniques. We now have EDM, OCR, thousands of built-in pattern, machine learning, natural language processing-based classifiers. We recently also introduced custom document types, where you're able to upload your own documents for fingerprinting and then use that in conjunction with any other patterns. And the last is we understand a typical enterprise will have lots of users that will want exceptions to some of these. So we also support user-led remediation. So if something happens, you can configure in policy whether it can be overridden by the user for legitimate business reasons or not. So let's jump right into the DLP detections best practices. I'll walk through the product, and also we'll go through each of these best practices to understand what we mean by that as well. So we know how best can you take advantage of the system. So let me actually start by introducing the system itself. So I'm simply using data loss prevention window under manage over here. So it's basically distributed and organized in a few ways. We have a few detection techniques, and we also have document types and custom document types, which we're going to talk about in this session as well. And then you can construct data profiles, which are a combination of most of these patterns, data patterns, as we call them. So this is the basic taxonomy that we have over here for our DLP detection engine. And we recently introduced these additional metadata properties that will help you better figure out which kind of patterns are used where, and what's the technique underlying in many of these patterns. Like, for example, if you want to look for just machine learning based patterns, you can totally look for it and then use them if you want to get value pretty quickly, or if you have a more advanced DLP program that you want to have regular expression, custom regular expression, and then chain that with any of these properties, you can do all of that. So let's just start looking at what we mean by some of the best practices, right? Like the first one is about using specific data patterns as opposed to generic. So this is the most common scenario that we see. And the DLP as a tool, we support about 1,063 patterns. So it has data patterns ranging all over the place. So the first one is, like, for example, we ourselves have quite a few of these generic ones. Like health generic will go pick any document that has anything remotely related to healthcare information. It could be, for example, hospital names. It could be procedure names in general. So it's more like a dictionary. And then we add that on top of, any other type of data like ICD codes, patient codes. All of that also comprises, which is great. But it also picks up some of the more generic terms that is within the industry as well. So like even financial. So this is of great use if you are a customer that is actually not healthcare, but you want to look for any healthcare specific documents. But if you are a healthcare customer, it's going to pick up every document that's out there. So that's what we mean by picking specific versus generic. The second one is prefer ML powered and ML augmented patterns. So here, based on the type and the filter that we just showed, we talk about what is the technique that is underlying on many of these patterns. Like, say, for example, you could either use the application credentials pattern, which is an ML driven pattern that talks specifically about looks for passwords, secrets, and everything that is related to application credentials. Another way to build something like this is using a combination of, say, you could use a combination of AWS secret key, client ID, and then and multiple different secret keys, because we have about 16 different secret key patterns that we currently have. So this can be more specific, but you have to build the profile that is most appropriate enough for you. Like, say, if you're using Twitter libraries to crawl data and so on, like you would need to get more specific over here. So that's just one example. So by this time, we've spoken a few times about how to build on top of existing patterns. So I'm gonna go over the data profiles tab and then show you how we build some of these on top. So just for recall, so you know what I'm talking about when it comes to future parts of the presentation. So you can use a combination of multiple different data patterns to be able to get to a data profile. So you have classic, advanced, and nested profiles. So I typically prefer advanced profiles unless you are using and relying on Panorama Management Server for making edits. So let's click on this, and then you do data patterns. This is everything that we saw within the detection methods data pattern option. So you choose any of those that we saw here, right? Like, say, for example, AWS secret key, if it comes to that. And then you have a lot more tuning that you can use over here. So, for example, you can detect a minor breach versus a major breach, and then you say that, okay, more than 5 secret keys is what is a major breach, for example. So you could say more than or equal to 5. You also have the option of choosing unique occurrences versus repetitive occurrences. So let's say this is a copy paste of the same secret key 5 times. we actually have the ability to allow you to configure that and also give that to you when we do the detection as well. So, for example, it might be a major breach for you if you see more than 5 different AWS secret keys that's going away from this background versus maybe just one that is that's just copy pasted 5 times. A scenario for this could be you could have tighter policies like stricter blocking based or quarantine based policies for like a larger blast radius versus the smaller ones. You can allow the user to go fix it and so on. So you have that fidelity when you create policy as well. And any of these data profiles can be used in policy across all of the 7 vectors that we saw in the previous slides. So you can have separate policies and profiles that just have lower tolerance or higher tolerance, however you want to do it. So that's I just wanted to show the gist of what we mean by chaining of some of these patterns. So this is preferring ML-powered, ML-augmented patterns. So on the existing patterns as well, you have a few options that you can work with. So just because it's predefined, it doesn't mean that it's rigid and you can't make changes around it. Like, let's just say we take, for example, some of our regular expression-based patterns that's predefined. Like, for example, in this case, health ID of Australia. So we do this, it talks about a little bit of context. It tells you, it tries to help you with information of what it has. And then let's say we do a clone. You have the ability to customize the proximity keywords associated with this predefined pattern. We find this very helpful in the sense that if you think you have some specific information that you want to add on top of existing proximity keywords, you can always do so. And that's just the advantage of being able to customize this. Like sometimes the reason proximity keywords are important is that this is what determines if you would have a high confidence match or not in a traditional pattern-based matching system. So if the proximity keyword matches over and above the regular expression, then it's a high confidence match versus just say the pattern is matching, it will be considered a lower confidence match. So if you want to make sure your high confidence matches are curated, one good place to look at is this. So if it has 2 generic things like, a number or anything else of that sort, like these are all are pre-curated proximity keyword patterns, but you can feel free to customize it as you need as well. And we're always looking for feedback. So if you see any inaccuracies in proximity keywords that are specific to your geography or region, do let us know as well. So that's just what we mean by being able to customize proximity keywords. So we've already shown you the kind of levers that you are able to pull for making some of these changes such that we make the DLP system work for you and not just a generic version as such. Going to the next one, right? Like, so we spoke a little bit about confidence detections. We spoke about what's the high confidence and what's the low confidence detection. Like, for example, in a pattern based, you have higher if the proximity keyword is also matching for you. So let's take a quick look at why we mean by looking at specific just high confidence detections. Like it's just that if you have more of these, like if you're starting off with a DLP program and you want to capture the lowest hanging fruits to go fix your DLP posture, for example, I would recommend starting with high. And then on the low, because it's just a pattern-based match, you would have more matches that we have a little lesser degree of confidence about. Like, for example, things like US driver's license number, most of the 9-digit or 11-digit number can actually be something like that. So and the same but things like social security numbers or TINs, where there's a lot more structure to the whole thing, like it could we typically have a good level of high confidence detections over there. So let's quickly get in, and typically a low confidence match is useful if you want to capture pretty much all of the scenarios that is possible, and then you want to take a look at that, at least for logging purposes, or if you want individual analysts to go take a look at some of these events as well. That's how that low confidence matches have been used by some of our other customers. This is the next one, using geography specific tags for data patterns that are tied to a region. So this is brand new, fresh off the shelf. We released this feature about a week back, actually. So we now have geography tags that you can use for each of these patterns. What we recognize is there are some patterns that are global, like things like source code or secrets. Those will all be global. But every region has its own unique requirements of things like a national identifier or driver's license number or things like that. So you do have a relevant geographies filter that you could use. So you have a multi-select. So if, let's say, you are based out of APAC, and then you can then use specific countries as well. Or if you are, and like how typical most businesses are, you don't operate in just one region, but you operate in multiple. So you can choose the kind of regions that you are interested in as well. And this gives you a little bit of detail on which of the regions do each of these patterns correspond to. Like this is a full bank account number for Japan, so obviously it includes Japan and China. I mean, the China one has China and so on, and just based on which region that these countries came from. So inaccuracies creep in when we try to add too many regions into the same profile or a pattern. So, for example, if you are, and we have about 180 plus countries, and on our DLP engine we support quite a few of them. It's just some specific countries do not have like very strict restrictions as to how their national identifier or driver's license could look like. And this ends up being a problem where, sometimes it's picking up a lot of 6-digit numbers, especially on low confidence, because at that point, if the pattern is not strict enough, the only lever that we have for matching is based on proximity keyword. So the high confidence detections on them will still be better, but the low confidence match could be relatively generic just because of the broad nature of how that particular national ID or their driver's license number, for example, is defined. So we've already covered 5. That's a pretty big list. Is there should we just go over the next 5, or should we pause for questions before we do the next 5?
No, yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the next one is around advanced techniques, and I want to highlight that because most mature DLP programs use some of these or a combination of these. So let's start with exact data match and index document type, which are 2 recent things that we introduced. Exact data matching, EDM, has been present with us. It has been with the system for over a year now. This is we just give the option for customers to let us know what is the exact data that they want to be protected. And this is based on a client utility. So you have a tool where you download this, and then we one-way hash it at the client utility level, which means we would never know what that particular sensitive data ever was. And then you would upload the hashed or salted index back to our system. So typical scenarios where we've seen customers use this is things like patient IDs, employee IDs, and things like that. So rather than relying on, say, like a pattern of 7 digits of alphanumeric characters, you're now really talking about, hey, this is the list of my 10,000 employees, and I want to make sure anytime you see this exact data, flag it with a much higher level of confidence. So you could potentially block it in line or use a quarantine technique and data at rest or things like that as well. once you do that, once you have an EDM data set, you are able to create a data profile just the way we showed in advanced data profile previously. So you could add an EDM data set that was used. So in this case, we saw like a sample data set, V3CLI, that data set was already present. It's simply a spreadsheet of multiple values. And then we go from each of those being present, and you could even map the specific fields. So let's say these are social security numbers of your employees, or you're talking about like zip code, any of these, you could totally use that. Like, let's just say zip code is probably like, relatively less sensitive. So I would probably use something like more than 10 when it comes to that. And I'm using an OR combination here. What's even more interesting is you can always chain an EDM with any other existing predefined data pattern that we just spoke about. So let's say there is interest in a document that contains any of this data, and say you could use now like a relatively loose pattern, like something like a first name. You could do that, like in this case, let's say Australia. Social security number doesn't make sense at that point, but this is just an example, right? Like, so let's say you then use Australia names, and then at present with any document with a high level of confidence, you could use that data profile to construct it. The challenge with using patterns like names or addresses is that even in reality, most documents have names and addresses. So if you don't use it with the right level of chaining, such as say, excuse me, such as say an EDM data set or a document type, it happens that it's picking up a lot of documents because it's not uncommon for names and addresses to be present in many documents. So there's another technique that I wanted to quickly talk about, and it's brand new as well. We released it about 3 weeks ago. We released it about 3 to 4 weeks ago. So it's called document types. As you can see, it's in our top level tab. What we have is an ability for customers to add a new document type of their own. Like, let's say, for example, we are talking about custom invoices. You are a healthcare customer that would like to have their client intake form salted and hashed by us. We could totally do that, and I'm going to quickly show a sample of how that. What's a good client intake form that we support, for example. Like, so let me do resume sharing. Yeah. So this is just one particular thing that we just got off the internet. So we are by no way associated with this doctor. It's just what we got from the internet. I'm talking about full name, and then like, names and addresses and stuff like that. What we really do by custom document types is really take this blank form and then similar to what we do on EDM, we privacy preserving, we hash it. And anytime we see a filled version of this document, we are able to protect that from coming through. It doesn't matter how it's filled, how much content is there. Like, as you can see, many of these are multi-line answers that you could potentially provide. You can have all of that being filled as long as it follows the structure and template of the original document. We will be able to catch that. So this has been popular with customers of several segments. We also do offer intellectual property protection through this. So you could take, for example, a specific recipe or a source code that is proprietary to you, and we are able to detect anytime that recipe or a source code is used in a larger document with the overlapping score that could potentially be there. So you're able to upload this blank form over here. So it takes only one single source file at a time, and then it goes from salting it, like it goes from generating a unique fingerprint for that particular document. And anytime you're now able to use it on a data profile, just the way you would do for EDM. And all of these are available only under advanced profiles. So you can add a document type and select any of the document types that we have uploaded under custom document types. What's even more interesting is you have the ability to test these document types as well. So for example, this is a client intake form. So I'm going to download this one that we just saw and upload this for testing. Just quickly, so let's just say this is what we're at. Yeah, so this gave like a near perfect 99 overlapping score. And then you're just able to use that to go ahead and determine what your matching would be if you used it as a data profile. And then you get into data profiles to go create, just the way we saw, this client assessment intake form as a document type. So what this now means is anytime a document that looks like this comes in with 50 or above overlapping score, like in this case we saw 99, so it was pretty confident that that was the same document. So just for sake of it, I can do a 95. And what's even more interesting is you can, just the way we said before, you can chain this with any of your existing data patterns. So if you are not worried about first name, last name in every document, but you're worried about a first name, last name in a patient intake form, as you rightly should be, you could totally use some of these patterns. For example, in this case, let's pick another country. So this would be Netherlands' first name with a high level of confidence, and then you press save, and then you're now able to match for every Netherlands-based first name in any of your client intake forms. So all of these things add fidelity and accuracy to the product. So you're able to get more specific rather than just get a generic version of it. Like say anything that matches any name would be an issue, right? Like for example. And then we spoke about number 7 at length, using regex data pattern in conjunction with other techniques such as document types. We also saw unique counts similarly. So whenever you see unique count happening for a particular data pattern, so you can use, you can say 5 different AWS keys or 5 same AWS key, whatever is something that you consider based on your DLP program as something that's worth blocking or quarantining, as an example. We do recommend many times using AND chaining on data patterns that may be present in documents. Of course, this is really driven by business use case, but sometimes we feel a scenario where, since R is the default, unless we do document types, it sometimes goes to be like they really did not meant to have an AND combination, but it ended up being an OR combination. So it catches things like name, or address, or telephone number, or something else. Like, and it could well be that each of these is sensitive for you based on your DLP program. But this is just how we are trying to do the like. I'm just saying that this combination exists to make sure we got the right thing. So the last one is around file properties and document labeling. I wanted to make sure we got that part right. So we've made some improvements to our file property-based detection, and this is actually new for many customers, and we think we should do a better job of exposing this. The way to do file properties is by going to add data pattern, and instead of doing a custom data pattern, you add a file property data pattern. We have a few file property based predefined patterns as well. Like, for example, things like encrypted, encoded, password protected documents, we are able to detect. We are able to detect specific AIP tags as well. Like, so these are just what we have. This is a custom file property, for example, and then encrypted within Microsoft AIP, without Microsoft AIP, all of those we detect. So that's just the technique tag here, but more often than not, you will have to use a custom file property because it's unique to your organization's needs. Like, for example, here we support things like AIP tags directly as well. So let's just say anything that reads confidential, you're looking for it, and you have the ability to use things like file author, extension, and file shop. So each of this can be comma separated. This can be up to 100 values of file shop. we do the SHA2 algorithm. There's documentation around each of these as well in our public Tech Talks portal. So you could use semicolon separated hashes or semicolon separated names or wildcard names as well. Like, so if you have a specific taxonomy of how your files are going to look like, you can use wildcard characters in these names as well. And you can use this pattern in combination with any of the existing patterns, like we just saw with EDM or IDM today. So you could say, well, I'm only concerned about files that have the tag confidential and also has a first name, last name on it, as an example. I keep doing the first name, last name thing because it's just some of the times, pretty much every document is likely to have some name or the other. So it's just, so that's why we always pick it up for chaining based examples. So in order to help you filter down further on that loop. So that is mostly what I had in terms of content. We've been making a lot of progress on our ML-based augmentation as well. So I want to quickly run through that while we still have the time. So this is around us doing machine learning-based augmentation to our existing data patterns, such as driver's license, which sometimes can be a little bit more generic, but we are able to, with advanced context understanding, we are able to reduce the number of detections that we make across the board, especially the high confidence ones. This is around ML powered ID card detection. Typical, we see things like specific geographies have their own ID card that needs to be detected for. Yes, you have specific confidential information which you would detect through a typical OCR program, like here you have DL number, here you have Aadhaar number. Each of those will follow the pattern of an Aadhaar number. But that's potentially readable. But what we've seen is scenarios like images of each of these ID cards that sometimes look like, may not necessarily be clean enough for the OCR to pick up because of watermarking or whatever layers of text that's already present on it and stuff like that. So that's why we have the ID card based patterns where just looking at the image, we know this is a California driver's license or this is an Aadhaar card, and we're able to use that information to allow better detections. These are all available under the same data patterns construct as well itself. So it's about 15 plus ID cards that we support. We are expanding this to even further more countries. So there's roadmap to get this to up to 30 plus. So just some of the other things that we are referring to in here is things like PHI, application credentials, ability to do structured data detection, all of those things, as well as some of our newer product releases. Just wanted to highlight that. I know this was a lot of content. I just wanted to pause if there are any questions in the chat box. If not, we can end the session here.
Thank you, Raj. Great
Yeah.
content. I will stop the recording and then we can review the questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Azadeh.